social justice enthusiast Jennifer Mbogo. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. And thank you so much for joining us on New Dawn today. So let's begin with a look at what's making headlines on the dailies. And we begin with a look at what's making headlines on the People Daily. The front page there says 30,000 to exit public service. And we'll be having that up for you. But this is part of austerity measures by President William Ruto. There we go. As staff who have attained 60 years hung on to their boots following that directive with the president that those over the age of 60 should leave office with immediate effect. That story continues on page 4 of the People Daily. And so as it turns out, there's been a lot of anxiety and confusion within the public service following that directive with the president on Friday. And that confusion has also gripped press turtles as employees ponder their fate following the directive that 47 state corporations will be dissolved as part of government's efforts to reduce the wage bill. Now, this hits especially hard to public servants who had already attained the age of 60 but had been issued with letters extending their tenure of services, as now, they remain unsure of whether to leave office or stay put as a result of those extension letters. Now, Treasury last year revealed that about 30,000 workers were expected to proceed on retirement by the end of June last year after attaining the age of 60. So those remain in limbo. And then another 28,000 public servants are to retire next year after attaining the retirement age of 26,000, while 26,000 are to retire in 2026. So a lot of anxiety coming out of this. But let's bring in our panel in studio. Jennifer, I'd like to begin with you, because this was part of the demand, so to speak, by the Gen Z movement to reduce the public wage bill, to institute austerity measures that essentially save money for the country because we're spending more on recurrent expenditure. What do you make of this development?
I'd like to say, I think this is progress, and it's very unfortunate that we had to push the government to do what it's supposed to do. This doesn't make them better. We don't think now all of a sudden they are working. No, this is something you are supposed to be doing last year. This 30 should have gone last year so that we had more Kenyans come, the young ones, promotions happening. So as much as it's progress, this just is an affirmation to my generation, the affirmation that whatever course we are taking, whatever, it's worth it, that we are dying for, the cause. Because now I think they are now on their toes. It's unfortunate that we had to lose life for them to start doing their jobs. It's progress, and this means we are doing the right thing as a generation. We need to keep pushing, because this is it's a tip of the iceberg. There is so much more than the jobs, than people still working past 60 years, and yet you want to send young youths to different countries to work instead of letting them go and promoting the young people. So this is a step to the right direction for my generation. And yeah, we keep pushing.
All right.
Yeah.
Josephine, what do you make of this? Because the demands were made and some are now being implemented. And many say we need to then give credit where credit is due. But Jennifer says it's what should have been done anyway. So we cannot be clapping for the government for doing what they should have been doing. Do you agree?
First of all, thank you for having me here, Michelle, and thank you, K24, for inviting me. And I'd like to also send my condolences to all the families who lost their loved ones during the protests. Now, to answer your question on whatever is on the front page of the People Daily, truly, what is on Twitter is that you cannot clap for a fish when it swims, That's what it's supposed to do. But then again, we also come from a point of we were behind even at the beginning, and that's why the protests came. We had to have a renaissance and awakening and to help the government awake. So for a journey of 1,000 steps, it has to start with one step. Right. We started with something really nice. And I feel like this is a very good move, although for me, slightly bittersweet. Sweet because the young people can finally come to the positions that were taken up by all the people who have holded those positions for a long time. But then again, we also have to remember the people who furthered their studies for a long time, the professors, especially professors in the medicine field and professors in like the STEM fields. You know how long it takes for you to get a doctorate degree and, you know, to refine your skills. I think as much as we clap for this, we should also think about those people who are leaders in all those fields that have taken their time to study. And by 60 years, I feel like as much as they should not have positions in the government and in the parastatals, we should think about where we should put them, that they would nurture the young people who are actually coming into the field right now.
Kasmal, do you agree with that?
I would take a much more radical position and say that this is a knee-jerk reaction. And it does not do anything to further any of the demands that we made. Because when the president says that he's going to lay off 30,000 people because of their age, I think instead of starting with the 30,000, because he turns 60 in a few, is he going to leave public service as well? The members of his cabinet who are 60, we should have seen them rolling first if he was deliberate. Because what this does is it starts from the point that, you know, when you lump it up as such a figure, now we start thinking about it as families. And it also exposes the rot that is going to be there in the retirement benefits. Because we also know that in terms of insurance and whatever the policies that have always been there, there has always been scandals in terms of like their remuneration when it comes to retirement. So yes, as much as these people are supposed to exit office, this is nothing compared to what it is that we're supposed to do. If he was serious about extending goodwill, these 30,000 jobs, because as he has been insisting that he's creating jobs, he has not been saying that, yes, as much as we're getting jobs for you guys abroad or online or the digital superhighway that he is want to talk about, he has not said what is going to be the impact of these 30,000 leaving public service. When he folds these 47 into the redundant offices into existing ministries, he has not given us a proper plan saying that now that there will be 30,000 vacancies, this is where the youth can plug in. So just saying that, it's like saying this is the life expectancy of Kenya. When it gets to this point, this is what happens. It is not a progressive move, if you ask me. It's just what's supposed to be. It's been necessitated by time. So we cannot necessarily use that to say that this is a step in the right direction. Time would have occasioned it.
All right, and I'd like to get your thoughts as well from where you're watching. Do speak to us on X at K24 Tv. The hashtag is New Dawn. What are your thoughts on these austerity measures being instituted by the government? Should the Gen Z movement give credit where it's due, or are they clapping for a fish that is swimming, which is essentially what should be done? But let's take a look at what else is making headlines. Let's go back to the front page of the People Daily, and we have a picture there. It says, "A looter continua, brave youth celebrate fallen comrades." And that is a picture of a section of youth at Nairobi's Uhuru Park yesterday for the protesters' memorial concert in solidarity with comrades killed by police during the anti-government demonstrations. And the story continues on the People Daily, and it is what's making headlines with the front page of the Daily Nation as well. And youth came out in large numbers in a very peaceful concert in honor of the lives of more than 40 Kenyans who fell or died as a result of police brutality in the anti-government demonstrations. Josephine, well, let me begin with you, Jennifer. What are your thoughts on just the manner in which this concert began and ended, and even the pictures and videos you saw on social media of protesters, not really protesters, but concert goers, hand in hand with police, side by side with police officers? What did that tell you?
So this is, if you look at this photo, this is a symbol of unity. This shows you that the people who are fighting are not the people the police are thinking they're fighting. Because police came to the streets and called us goons, and we were called criminals at some point. But if you see this photo, it shows you the lady who's holding a flag, people fighting for their nation, uniting because we're in the same crisis. So this is exactly what this movement is all about. The politics that are being, played around, the goons, the criminality. I think yesterday is a chance we showed the world that the youth of Kenya want change. That's all we are asking for. We were here mourning people who lost their lives fighting for this cause in a peaceful way. It's not only at Uhuru Park, we went to church. we had Holy Basilica host a mass for these people. The country is united in this. So I think for the nation, even for our leaders, they better watch out, because this does not stop here. This is to show you we are still willing to come outside. We might have been a little bit intimidated, a little fear crept in when we saw some of us die on spot, you know. So with that, this is actually very hopeful to us. It means so much to the generation. It means that we are in the right cause for whatever we are fighting for, yeah.
Right. And you take a look at page 2 of the Daily Nation. It says thousands actually turned up. And this was on Saba Saba Day, a date that coincides with the 1990 Saba Saba uprising. And it was a special day as the youth vowed to maintain their push for an accountable and corrupt-free leadership. Josephine, what are your thoughts on the fact that the movement continues despite, you know, as Jennifer says, a little fear having crept in as a result of the police brutality? 40 lives were lost. What are your thoughts on the direction the movement should head, looking from what happened at the concert yesterday?
I think the People Daily put it like quite on point by saying a luta continua. This movement did not start just to result in a knee-jerk reaction, as Kasmil said, of the government. This movement started so that we can completely make sure the government is accountable and is meritocratic in their actions. The fact that it is continuing, first of all, you should know that I've never seen a better demonstration of the Kenyan flag, such as that picture on the People Daily. That is black, white, red and green. Black for the people, red for the blood that was shed, green it was in Uhuru Park, and white that it was peaceful. This is what Kenya envisioned when we were making even the Kenyan flag. And it will not stop here. The Gen Z uprising is not an uprising that starts and stops like in other countries. You know, most countries have the big day one when you're having a demonstration and then it goes on dying. This is to tell the members of the government that we will continue watching peacefully, but we will be stern. And they should be knowing that even though I disagree that it's a knee-jerk reaction, you know, from, as Kasmil said, I feel like even if we want progress or, you know, like a better Kenya, we have to start from somewhere. And that is, this austerity measures, that is somewhere that we started from. So we're just telling the members of parliament, yes, we agree, we've started from here, but this is not where you will stop.
Okay, and we'll be getting a little deeper into the luta continua, because which way there's been talk of division among, Gen Z, the Gen Z movement, or within the Gen Z movement itself. We'll be discussing that and the discussions of betrayal that have come up in the conversation. But Kasmil, what do you make of the fact that it's not just the Gen Zs and millennials who spearheaded these memorial events? They've also been receiving massive support from people outside these two generations themselves, literally telling the Gen Z protesters, luta continua. What do you make of that?
I would say that the Gen Zs and the youth of the country are just a vehicle that's driving a much needed revolution. That's why I wouldn't dwell too much on terming it a Gen Z thing, because the more we term it a Gen Z thing, the more the talking points are going to be taken by the political elite. And you've seen them doing that, where they come out, they take whatever it is that we're discussing in the manifestos online and whatever it is our recommendations are, and they use them as talking points. While those sound very popular, what we've realized about the political elite is that none of them is special. None of them is truly for the people, because you'll find that as much as they might wax lyrical online or wax lyrical in parliament, the bills that favor them, they will still vote for them. And that's the thing. So I wouldn't think much that this is a Gen Z thing, because remember, they always look to find a way to divide the people. So remember, there was always Nyayoism, then there was whatever it was, Chungwa and Ndizi, then there was Hustler versus Dynasty. There's always an us versus them narrative. And the further we push this Gen Z thing, and you've seen the way the political class is lining, they're looking for the spiritual leaders, because our parents' generation is very grounded in terms of religion. You've had talks of people saying that these protests are a way of people trying to decamp the president, and they're trying to tribalize it. So I wouldn't dwell too much. We are the vehicle, yes, as the Gen Z. We are the driving forces, and we've said this. But it is a Kenyan constitutional right. When we come down to the nitty-gritty of it, we have now attained political consciousness, and we are saying that we are going to the streets. Even what you saw yesterday, for us mourning the lives that we lost, it did not need to be this way. And that's why I'm taking a very radical stance against the government, because a signature would have sorted all of this. One signature, a conversation that the political elite had would have sorted this.
Right.
But the ambulances that were meant for taking out sick people is what the political elite was taking refuge in. So it's quite something.
And what he brings up is part of what has fueled the movement and the rage to continue pushing for better governance. And it was a very somber mood. And, you know, there was a lot of videos and pictures that were circulating online for the better part of the week or the last 2 weeks of the different burials and funerals that have been conducted for those who lost their lives, many of them calling for justice. As we move on to the Daily Nation, Jennifer, why are you satisfied, even during that X-Space conversation, with the response that the president gave with regard to police brutality and the lives that were lost?
So, Michelle, there's this illusion that's going around that the government is actually listening. I don't know if it's just me, but there's like a lot of gaslighting in this room, where unfortunately we've even had some of the people who were at the front line of these Twitter spaces championing for whatever we are fighting for, hosting the president. We're seeing him come to X and he thinks that's gonna solve everything. The problem, Mr. President, is we do not even trust a single word that comes from your mouth. How is it that one night we ask you about a boy who was shot 9 times and you ask, is he alive? Then all of a sudden you're the good guy. You want to come to our spaces, you want to address those issues. So I do not believe this government. I do not trust anything. And this illusion that you know, like you said, we should give credit because they've, I don't know, they are firing 30 people to go home. Still, these families, the 60-year-old, there's a reason why they're still in that job, because they're not able to retire, because systems have failed them. The pensions are not working for them. Now you're switching NHIF to
SHIF.
Yes, you know. So recently, when the doctors were on strike, unfortunately, I had someone who was very ill and they're in their 60s. Then we go to hospital, someone who's paid NHIF for a long time, needed a procedure of like 160,000, NHIF approves 5,000. So tell me, how will that person actually retire, knowing they're not even safe, you know? So the problem is the entire system. We do not trust this government. We've seen your actions. So you coming to our spaces does not mean anything. We want you to go. It might not be today, but you will still go.
All right, and that's a conversation we'll be having at the top of the hour, because a lot has happened since Friday and that X-Space conversation. But let's move on to the Daily Nation. Let's wind up on page 10 of the People Daily, and that's the daily cartoon, my favorite part of the paper. And I would like to hear your thoughts on that cartoon as well. The hashtag is New Dawn, but it's a picture of Wanjiku. And she's holding the 2022 polls. What is it? What do they call the ballot boxes, essentially? And we have an MP here saying, please find a soft place in your heart and forgive me. It was the work of the devil. I'll never do it again. I beg you. Don't do this to me. And Wanjiku isn't listening, guys. You know, Wanjiku is looking the other way. She's put a padlock on the ballot box, and there's a huge mountain to climb for these members of parliament. I'd like to hear your thoughts and your interpretation of this picture. The hashtag is New Dawn. And Kasmil, even as we get your thoughts on that picture, what are your thoughts? Because this movement continues, and we've seen a lot of members of parliament eat humble pie as well, and essentially come down. But we've also seen those who said, listen, the president said those who voted yes for the finance bill will be seen as heroes in time to come. It is you guys who need to open your eyes. What do you make of that discourse at this point?
I mean, it is nothing but what the political class usually does. And just to even go back to that cartoon, it's the political elite pulling the kawaida card. And this does not work for our generation, because our generation does not spiritually bypass things. You know, our parents lived in a generation where there was a lot of silencing. You would not speak out loudly against authority. What they resolved to was praying about it. And I'm pretty sure that if you have enemies who are deep-seated and you talk to your parents about it, what do your parents tell you? You're tunachia Mungu. And for them, it was, and that's why I would sit down and say that the president is not a foolish man. He's a master politician, and that's how he got a politician and a schemer. That's how he got the seat. And when you hear a president look at a crowd and say, na mukiendelea hivi nitawashtaki kwa Mungu, you know very well that God or the spiritual entity, he knows that this appeals to the people. And when we talk about this being the act of the devil, it's what we usually say. This is not allowed. This is not allowed for political or governance issues. This is what you say when people are caught in Nairobi cheating. This is not about livelihoods of children who go hungry every single day. And you see this, they are unbothered and they're now holding on to it. I don't think that Wanjiku is particularly unbothered. It's because, one, there has been no food. You can see she's in tatters, but this person is in a suit, and they are sweating not out of humility, but out of embarrassment. Because the political class currently is not eating humble pie either, because they're looking at this thing and saying it's fleeting. That's why they said, we have made plans to quell this movement. And you saw they used their usual political gimmicks and antics of infiltrating these things. Right. So it is not coming from a point of humility, but a point of political scheming. And that's what we've said we will deal with, because we are unbothered. You cannot blackmail us spiritually. And at this point, we do not care about gimmicks. Nobody cares that you wear a great suit. Just do whatever it is that you're supposed to do, whether or not you're wearing it.
I remember during the demonstrations and part of the placards, and I mean, I think we need to discuss some of the placards or the part of the demonstration.
Right.
But one said, you know, we are leaderless, we are tribeless, but we're not rudderless. And it's interesting to see the young generation then expect so much. But let's take a look at the Daily Nation. And the front page there says inside MPs plot to grab state tenders. Now, this is as a result of the Senate making amendments to the Conflict of Interest Bill. And the ESCC now says that the Senate has greatly watered down the Conflict of Interest Bill after the Senate passed amendments that, among other things, gave the go-ahead for state officers to freely bag government contracts, right? And just last week, or Friday in fact, we had a member of the Senate in studio with us, and we asked why they made this move, and part of the reason was that it was unfair for someone, you know, who's related to them. It could be a distant cousin they've not spoken to for over a year, that it would be unfair for this person to be denied a government tender just because they're related to a member of parliament. That was just one of the reasons that were given. Josephine, what are your thoughts on this move, coming just days after the Senate seemed to be speaking the language of the people?
You know, I like what Casmel said and called them political gimmicks. There's really nobody on our side here, on the what you call the Gen Z side. All of them are just corrupt. And when they said, you know, when you talk about even salaries and remunerations of members of parliament, and even when they come here and they say that we're going to reduce our salaries, we're going to, what did they say? Their increments, they said they've stopped it. That was just to fool our faces. It's a facade. Really, this is where they loot money. This is where they take the taxpayers' money. I mean, this goes against the grain of what we call tenders and you know, giving people an opportunity to thrive as well. I don't think that it is fair for somebody to come here on an auspicious station such as this and say that it's unfair for their relative or their daughter or their son to not get government tenders, yet they're also looting on their side and will use that opportunity to get, you know, to get the tender just because they're related. They will have an upper hand against me who does not know anybody and wants to win that tender, even if I'm meritocratic and I'm up for the task, you know. So all these things that have been going on, even saying that we're not raising our salaries, you've listened to you, gimmicks. This is what we want to hear. Even the senator of Nairobi, who's my senator, who seems to have been on Gen Z side, voted yes to this bill. What does that say about him and his PR stance saying that he's for us? We need action and accountability on such things, you know. Right.
I'd like to hear your thoughts on this bill as well. We're going to take a break, but Josephine, let me give you, Jennifer, let me give you your last comment very briefly before we take a break on this.
So it's actually very unfortunate to see the leaders who we thought rather would side with us, you know, or they made comments supporting or purporting to support the movement Gen Z, and this was just such a PR stunt. And the best thing about this is they're getting exposed. Truly. The generation you're dealing with will get into those things. How you want now your family to access tenders. What's the difference with the president having appointing his wife an office? There's no difference, honestly. So all of them are going to go home.
All right, let's
I'm
take a
going
break.
to go.
We'll be discussing that decision by the Senate in a lot more detail as well after the break. So when we come back, it is a lot to discuss. Among them, the many firsts was that viral X-Space conversation with President William Ruto, which perhaps marked a turning point in Kenya's civic engagement, but also the beginning was rather cringeworthy. We'll be discussing that. Several attempts to connect the X-Space and then a final decision to be hosted by a member of the X, or an X-user, so to speak. We'll be discussing that and the conversation that has followed. The austerity measures by President William Ruto as well in a bid to appease the Gen Z movement. That and much more coming up after the break. Just stay with us.